Good morning, everybody. The character that you're seeing before you is a little bit weird because it's a caster Feyvoured Soul, but not just any caster Feyvoured Soul, it's a Tiefling Scoundrel caster Feyvoured Soul. You see, after playing through my Druid character, I wanted to try out some of the other, potentially less used spellcasters. The most powerful ones, Wizard, Sorcerer, and Alchemist, are all over the place, so I felt like it would be a good comparison to try Feyvoured Soul immediately after running through Druid. Now, the original plan was to spend a whole bunch of time leveling up the character, getting all the way to cap and spending some time at cap to really say, okay, how is this supposed to feel? However, much to my surprise, the new patch, the Fables of the Feywild, was announced with the big expansion and the pre-patch coming on, well, the Monday, October 12th. And since I had just reincarnated the character, I realized, oh man, I don't have time to fully play through this and do everything I want if I want to try out the Feywild stuff that's going to be coming, such as the Feydark Illusionist and the two shifters. As a result, I speed TR'd this character and got it done in 2 days. So, unfortunately, there was not really a lot of testing done. However, I would like to share my experiences with you, so if you wanted to try out this character for yourself, you can still have a good time. It is important to note that with this character build guide, that the fact that it was a Tiefling Scoundrel had almost no impact on my actual character gameplay. The only reason that I did it is because I wanted to cast spells using the lute, the musical instrument. I guess it's a viola. Anyway, with the musical instrument instead of actually saying words. If you did not know, when you use a Tiefling Scoundrel and you cast any spells, your character whips out a little viola and plays a jingle. Even if you multi-class into something else that isn't specifically Bard, or in my case, use a Lesser Heart of Wood to become a pure Feyvoured Soul, it still plays the songs. So I wanted to do that because I thought that would be kind of a cool idea. If you'd like to replicate this character, you absolutely do not need to do this and can use any race you like. So how did the character perform? Pretty good, actually. Overall, it does a lot more upfront damage than the Druid does. As well, it has more reactive healing in the form of close wounds, as well as getting the heal spell earlier and at a lower level than Druid. On top of that, since you have way more spell points, you can be a lot more liberal with your actual spell point usage. And the spell-like abilities, on average, are stronger. You don't get quite as many, given that you only really have Sunbolt and Cometfall, but Sunbolt is really strong and Cometfall is really strong. So this character performed pretty well, but you still run into the same problems when you run into Sharn. Monsters start to have a lot of health, and your damage just isn't quite there. Fortunately, if you're playing as a Feyvoured Soul or as a Druid, you can always just hop into any group and say, hey guys, I'm going to help heal you on the back end while also killing some monsters. One of the upsides of Feyvoured Soul is getting access to really fun spells such as Implosion, Destruction, Greater Command, and Cometfall, so that when damage just doesn't cut it, you're still able to crowd control and instant kill monsters on the fly. It's also important to note that with proper gearing, your Cometfall actually does a ton of damage and completely massacres monsters that it hits. I had an easier experience with the Feyvoured Soul, and I'm not sure if it's because I just had more of a mana pool, so I didn't have to be as conservative with some of my spell points, or just that the class fared a little bit better, or even just my familiarity. But overall, I had more fun with the Feyvoured Soul. I enjoyed it a lot more, and you might have a similar experience to me. As far as what actual spells or feats you should take, as I've said before, you got to make sure you're taking the good ones, and you pretty much build this character like any other caster, grabbing the right meta magic feats, quicken, maximize, the like, and then also taking whatever spell focus you need, as well as some potentially other feats. This character was a charisma-based Feyvoured Soul, and in general you should play Wisdom, but I wanted to do charisma based because I was scaling some other weird stuff, such as the Perform skill for the Ash Imprisonment out of the Tiefling Scoundrel, so I needed to actually have the charisma instead of the wisdom. Now that being said, I did actually muck about with the Feydark Illusionist tree. It did release before I could finish TRing, so I decided to put a bunch of my points into it, and well, I gotta say, I'm pretty impressed. It works really well in the Feyvoured Soul, giving me access to greater color spray, as well as a bunch of extra critical damage for some of my force spells, most specifically for the Cometfall. This allowed my Cometfall to do an extra large amount of damage, as well as giving me access to some new spells, such as the Fan of Shadowblades. The Familiar giving me extra damage, the extra crit chance, and the Fan of Shadowblades actually made the tree pretty worth it. Now granted, in order to spend as many points as I did to get up to tier 5 and to grab the extra and large, I had to take some points out of the Beacon of Hope tree. If you're playing as a regular spellcaster Feyvoured Soul, I wouldn't really recommend putting more than 11 points into the Feydark Illusionist tree, because anything more than that probably isn't going to give you too much of a benefit, but I gotta say, Greater Color Spray is absolutely insane for crowd control. This spell worked for me all the way through Reaper Ravenloft while I was level 28 and wearing gear for level 10 and 15. It is extremely potent, and I think one of the things you're going to see a lot of people do with the Feydark Illusionist is spending 11 points in the tree to get their Greater Color Spray, which is essentially just the same color spray as a regular gnome. Now, if you don't know too much about the new Feydark Illusionist tree, that's okay. I'll have a video coming up soon that's going to go through into detail what it's good for, what it's not good for, what are its strengths, and when you should or shouldn't use it. But we'll leave that for another day. I didn't really have enough time to get and do a lot of testing before I could actually make a video. With all of that being said, I will hand it over to me, who will explain to you how to make this character. As an important note, I did not actually write up a build guide for this character. It's really straightforward what kind of stuff you should take and build it like any other casters, and honestly, I didn't really test it that well, so I don't have a specific build guide set up, or I'm not making a full forum post. I'll put a paste bin in the description of this video if you want to actually follow a build, but it's going to be pretty bare bones, just essentially exactly what I did, and you can kind of work off from there. But I don't really want to put a full build for this one just because I didn't take the time to really test it, and so it's not really consistent. But if you want something basic, like a skeleton to go off of as to say how I could build a caster favored soul, well then you'll be able to see that. And it's also important to note that I also am using a special custom UI skin that you're able to get now on the DDO forums. It came out on October 10th. I will put the link in the description if you want to check it out, as we are using the Tormented Gothic Princess's Gothic Bites magical UI, and I have to say, it is absolutely fantastic. There's different colors and it changes stuff all over the place. Now granted, for me personally, some of the more brighter colored palettes don't work well for me because I have issues seeing the colors red and green, which is very hard for playing video games. However, the Nightshade darker coloration is fantastic, and there's all sorts of changed elements. Not just the actual color of some of the menus and panels, but also full redesigns of some of the icons in game, as well as backdrops and pictures all over the place. It's a really cool thing, and I hope you check it out. There will be a link in the description, as I'm sure I will talk to you again about because I'm inconsistent at editing my videos. Without further ado, listen to me tell you how to build this character. So to find out exactly what makes a spellcaster favored soul, we're going to look at it right here. To get started, you don't have to play as a Tiefling Scoundrel. I just did it because I thought it would be kind of fun, you know, playing as a character, getting all those little instrumentals every time I wanted to cast any type of spell. I thought that would be pretty cool. And so it was a really fun, enjoyable experience for the most part. All those little clicks and clacks and just exciting sounds. This character is focused entirely on Charisma as a Charisma-based favored soul. Wisdom is usually the preferred route. Even like on a Charisma-based class or race, Wisdom is usually going to end up being better. Mostly because Wisdom gives you will saves, whereas Charisma doesn't. So Wisdom will usually end up being better, but I wanted to use Charisma here in the first place. Now, outside of that, your skills don't really matter when you play Feyvoured Soul. I put like 1 point into UMD in case I was going to use it. I didn't. Spoiler alert. And then you need Spellcraft and Heal. I also put points into Perform because I was playing as a Tiefling Scoundrel, and Tiefling Scoundrels have an ability that causes monsters to freeze based on Perform, but you also don't have to do this. As far as feats during the leveling process, I'm a spellcaster, so I took all the basic spellcaster feats. I took Quicken, Maximize, and Heighten to make sure all of my spells were at the strongest of their power. I also decided to take some spell focus feats, so like spell focus evocation, since evocation are the most potent of my spells. I also needed to take a defensive feat, Force of Personality, to get my will saves to scale off of my charisma, which was actually pretty important. And then on top of that, I think that's pretty much it. That's all the feats, right? Yeah, sure. One of the things I did with this character that's important, if you're playing as a favored soul, especially, it doesn't matter what kind of favored soul it is, usually you can either get Stout of Heart, which gives you extra health, or Purity of Spirit, which gives you extra spell points. I went with the spell points. I also never ran out, which was unrelated to Purity of Spirit. You just get so many as a favored soul, you don't really need this feat, and you can go with health instead, which sometimes you do actually run out of. However, I like having a big mana bar, so I can be like more aggressive with my spell casting. It's entirely up to you, but Stout of Heart is in almost all cases going to be better than Purity of Spirit, although I do like Purity of Spirit because it is fun. As far as the energy absorption options that you can pick as a favored soul, I usually go with Electricity, Fire, and Acid. I find these spells are going to be the ones you're going to be experiencing most commonly. One of the things that is nice, though, during the early levels, especially by level 10, is to take Cold. This helps lessen the amount of damage you take from Polar Ray, which could otherwise instantly kill you. As far as my epic feats went with this character, epic feats are pretty boring, especially for this type of spellcaster. I took Master of Light to get an extra plus 10 cast level to Sunbolt, Searing Light, and Divine Punishment. However, it occurred to me after reading this again that since I'm playing as a favored soul, I actually didn't need to take this feat. So this was an unnecessary feat. I would have taken Embolden instead. At 21, I did take Wellspring of Power because Wellspring of Power is just strong. It adds a bunch of extra damage, so you can just burst out and kill somebody. I took Epic Fortitude because I didn't want to fail Fortitude saves on a 1. I really like this feat, getting the ability to kind of resist all Fortitude saving throws and just say, hey, guess what? I rolled a 1 on my Disintegrate and I still didn't die. That feels good and something fun to walk back from. I then took Epic Damage Reduction, but the thing is, for one of my feats, I actually took Wind Through the Trees, and another feat I took Elusive Target. So these are two feats that you get from having maxed out Martial Destinies and Primal Destinies. I took these two feats because, one, most of the feats that you get from the Epic Destiny feats aren't very strong for a spellcaster. You can get, sure, an extra 20 spell points to your main spell power, but if I already have 800, I mean, that's not even like 0.2% damage. It's not a big deal. But Elusive Target makes it so that 5% of the time, I completely ignore damage when I get hit, and Wind Through the Trees makes it so 5% of the time, enemies get knocked down with no save. It's important to note, that's not what this does. This is 100% chance to knock down the first target that attacks you with a cooldown of 12 seconds. This is not a 5% chance, it's every time. So very good, highly recommend it. It's a fun little feat to muck about with. Now, as far as the spells go, straightforward, take the good spells, not the bad spells. I played as an Iconic, so I started at a higher level, but for the most part, you're going to be picking up most of the defensive buff spells, stuff like Circle Against Evil, Aid, Resist Energy, Bless, Mass Shield of Faith, Freedom of Movement, Death Ward, the stuff that I don't really need to tell you to take, that these are just like good area of effect spells or single target buff spells are some of the best in the game. As far as unique spells, I say you should definitely look out for Prayer. I like Prayer a lot because it's at level cap, it's an extra +5 to all saves and skill checks. That's luck bonus, so it scales with stacks with basically everything. So that one's pretty good. And also Firestorm. I didn't use Firestorm when I played Druid, which was a mistake because this spell ended up completely blowing out my expectations. It's a little quirky. One thing you have to know about Firestorm is that it doesn't actually cast on the target you are selecting. This is the only spell in the game that I know that does this, so please be aware, this is a completely different thing. But when you cast Firestorm, it only cares where you're looking. It casts it where your character camera is pointing and not at the target you have selected. It will never follow your selected target. It'll always follow the area that you're pointing at. So if you want to cast Firestorm, you just have to look where you want it to go, press the button, and it will go there. So very surprisingly good spell, and the area is also way larger than it looks. So it was landing pretty often. I liked it a lot. Now, as far as enhancements go, one of the things you're going to notice is I do have a lot of points in the Tiefling Scoundrel tree. However, it's the 12 that I got for free from a race. You don't really need the points in here. The only reason, as I said, I took Perform was this for effect right here, the Ash Imprisonment. It makes it so one of my skills turns into a freeze effect, like a Flesh to Stone. I stopped using this once I got to Epics, so I don't think you really need to use this either, so you don't have to go with that. You can just kind of skip that. It doesn't really matter that much. However, I did end up putting points into this new tree, the Feydark Illusionist. If you're watching this video, then I haven't made a video yet about the Feydark Illusionist, if you're watching it when it came out. If you watched it after, then you already know what this is, so you can skip this my excitement. But it's really cool, and it synergizes super well. One of the reasons why I was excited for the Feydark Illusionist is because any caster can get some kind of small to large benefit out of this tree, and I think it synergizes very well with the Feyvoured Soul spellcaster. Keep in mind, I'm not a healer. Beacon of Hope, 8 points, so I am not spending all my points in the healing tree. Instead, Angel of Vengeance and Feydark Illusionist. Out of Angel of Vengeance, we're taking the good stuff. Picking up all the cores because they're crazy powerful, picking up all the crit because it's crazy good, grabbing the Scourge because this is effectively 30 spell power to all the ones that you cast, grabbing Just Reward, because with this, it gives you nearly infinite mana. Anytime you critically hit with a Fire, Force, Light, or Physical spell, you gain 10 temporary spell points, and you critically hit a lot, so this is very good. On top of that, Sunbolt is the most powerful spell-like ability. You want to rush this first, get this as soon as you can, because this will carry you throughout the entire game without really needing to do too much else. Then I grabbed Intense Faith for the extra +3 maximum catch levels, and Zealous Faith. I'm actually going to be honest, I don't know if you need Intense Faith, but I did take it. I haven't done enough testing with it to see what my damage would be like without it, but this is like 9 points that you might not actually need to take, and you can take some other stuff. But either way, that's what I went with. I grabbed the Archon from the Archon's Fury, Archon's Fury. Wait a minute, what's this? Huh, I never used this. So I never pressed this button, so I don't know if it's good or not, couldn't tell you, but apparently I did take it. I thought that was the Archon. Well, now we know. Anyway, and then I took the Comet Fall. I did not take Unstoppable Magic to make it so your Aura of Menace reduces monster spell resistance, because I didn't cast any spells that could be resisted. I casted Comet Fall, Sunbolt, and all sorts of just direct damage spells, so I never needed to worry about spell resistance on monsters. And then Evocation Focus. It's 2 points for 1 Evocation DC, which I didn't really need for my character. I skipped over Beacon of Hope because I was more interested in the Feydark Illusionist. So what does Feydark Illusionist bring to this character class? A couple things. Number 1, force damage. This cat that I got right here gives me 5 extra force spell power and 5 universal spell power for every single point that I have. That's pretty damn good. On top of that, I'm getting extra mana out of the tree. I'm getting a Shadow Blade spell, which is an extra spell that I can throw out all the time. +3 to all saves, which is really powerful. Critical chance for spells, as well as this Fan of Shadow Blades for additional damage. Now the big thing, and probably the most important thing, is this right here, Greater Color Spray. This is the color spray from Gnome and Deep Gnome, and what this does is it freezes everything on screen. It says DC 17 plus highest of Int, Wisdom, and Charisma, and you saw that right. Doesn't matter if you're playing as a Wisdom-based Feyvoured Soul, or Charisma-based Feyvoured Soul, or Wisdom-based Druid, or Intelligence-based Wizard. All of these things will let you cast this spell to incredible effectiveness. I was doing Reaper mode Ravenloft at level 28, and I could just freeze everything while going through. Almost nothing made it save. This is an incredibly powerful spell, and I highly recommend you get this. Feydark Illusionist is going to leave its mark by being the tree that most people will put 11 points in to pick up this bad boy right here. So I highly recommend it. Check out Greater Color Spray. You'll have a lot of fun. I was just mucking about the tree. I don't think you need to spend any more than 11 points, but I did enjoy getting Familiar's Reach to have all my spells be enlarged with no extra cost. Enlarged just means you can cast them from across the planet. So if I see some guy doubles the spell range, I can say, okay, well, he's, all the way down this hall, all the way at the other end of the building, all the way on the other side of the country. And I can just say, hey, by the way, destruction, and they disappear. So pretty cool and useful. If I was to redo this properly, I would say you'd only want 11 points in the Feydark and spend the rest of your points in Beacon of Hope and actually heal people, because Beacon of Hope, this spell right here, is completely insane and very, very strong. But that being said, you can build it however you want. This is how I decided to build it. Anyway, overall, my take is that Caster Feyvoured Soul during the leveling process was pretty easy and a little bit easier than Caster Druid. It was also a little bit more fun, and I like the aesthetic of the holy stuff as well. So if you like that, make sure you give that a shot. The leveling process seemed pretty good. Granted, I started at level 15. I did not have to struggle through the lower levels, so your mileage may vary. As far as endgame gearing and building for this character, I think that probably if you want to do DPS as an endgame spellcaster, it's better to swap off to Wizard, Sorcerer, or Alchemist. Not that this character can't do anything, but you will be noticeably lower. This type of character, that's when you want to swap into more instant kills, get that healing on the side, and also have some of that crowd control from the Greater Color Spray. But granted, your competitors, the other DPS characters like the Wizards, Sorcerers of the world, and the Alchemists, they will all be getting the Color Spray as well. So just keep that in mind. Anyways, that's all I have. So if you like this and you want to play some cool Feyvoured Soul, make sure you check it out. And if you really like this and you saw what you're looking at and you're like, wait a minute, what the heck is this guy's UI? What the whoa, look how different this is. Oh, did you even see the inventory panel? Oh my gosh, this is, oh my gosh. If you want to get one of these, I'll put a link in the description. This is a brand new set of UI like skins that was put out by Gothic Bytes, and it is super cool. I think you will love the look of this, the aesthetic. There's different colors, and I love it a lot. Sorry, not Gothic Bytes, Tormented Gothic Princess. I misread the title of the thing, but Tormented Gothic Princess put out this awesome, cool UI pack that everyone can play around with, and if you haven't seen it yet, I think you'll love it. There's different colors and all sorts of things you can do, and so there'll be a link in the description of this video if you want to go pick that up. I am not going to write out a physical guide for this character because I literally played 2 different builds at the same time, and I'm not planning on doing an endgame thing, but I just kind of wanted to touch on it so you guys would have like a whole capstone archstone video. I only played this character for 2 days, so because Feywild was announced, and I had to make a Feywild character, so that's it. Thank you for watching. I will see you all next time. Enjoy the rest of your day and brush your teeth.